Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei trained by Madara part 5. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video, and also go support the JAGA03 for writing that awesome fanfic. Let's start this video. Issei was horrified at what he saw. Well, not really, he was more angered by it. He knew that this did not happen by chance. As he watched the screen in the student council room, he felt his blood pressure beginning to rise. The newest hit in the underworld in heaven. The screen went blank, and Issei hoped that this new hit would be based of something else, rather than what he knew it was going to be. Hums the tale of an ordinary boy, raised by the demon of man. Any hope of that was dashed as Issei saw a flash of a Sharingan come across the scene. He also noted that they used the flames to show the picture burning up. Black flames, he knew only two people who could do this, one lived with him, the other was himself. The tale of an ordinary boy, raised by the greatest monster of this age. What happened next was almost funny. It was the scene when the cosplaying wife of Surzich met him. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" "I am Char Ansible." What they showed next was Ria's coming out of the room. Issei knew what she would say. "This is Issei Haidu, I requested him to come here." Now Issei was not all that big on missing out details, but he knew that these cut and pasted of what happened were on purpose. Also, how the hell did they record it? I better watch what I say. The next scene was him talking to Riser. "I have the immortal body of a phoenix fire as it is in my clan's blood. I am pure blood devil of the highest order. I see you're a classic megalomaniac. You failed to mention me once in that entire spat." He ought to quit jacking off to himself and put his lotion in the basket. Issei had to admit that line of his was actually funny. He was right though, Riser must have jacked off to himself when he was alone. The scene now skipped to part of the fight. Issei saw himself make a single hand sign and yell. "Witness now the great fuck your rules and your logic, breath of flame attack." Issei cringed while he knew that is not what he said, it might as well have been. He saw the attack and had to say, he did a damn good job despite the bullshit name they gave it. The scene changed where he and Riser were about to face off. He now knew they were altering it too for their own use. "You can't defeat me, I am an immortal child of the Phoenix, I've played school days." Issei watched as he yelled back at this Riser. He hoped that this was all bad acting, because he knew he had not done what was said next. "Riser, you're a third-rate villain, everyone knows Clannad is the best there is." The scene ends in a flash of red light. Issei was sure that and what he said did not happen. In fact, he was sure he had used Tsukiyomi and that arrogant bastard. Now came the title and the extras. Demon Eyes Issei Chronicles, The Gremory Affair, coming soon, collectibles out now. Place your order for the limited edition Madara figurine, complete with lifelike quotes. Madara Disciple, the video game, play as customizable character, live and interact in Kuo Academy and the realm of Madara, where you are never ever allowed to be anything but single. Issei closed his eyes. He knew it could not get any worse than this. He also knew that he could be wrong, and was proven so almost instantly. Issei listened to some strange version of him say way of life or something. He opened his eyes to see text on the screen. The words of Issei Haidu, "You can take my body and my soul, but you will never take my Clannad." Issei's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Not only did they screw up his motto, they mocked his favorite game Clannad. Closing his eyes, he began to chuckle. It grew so loud it became loud maniacal laughter. Sona along with her peerage and Ria's with hers now both looked at Issei. They only could accept the death that Issei would give them for this, the movie, but the merchandise they also were advertising. Issei, please don't kill us, we did not do anything." Sona said this while she looked to her sister, who gave her a playful smile. Issei's eyes now flared up his Sharingan. "Why should I not kill you? I mean, you are part of the after all." What Issei was about to say next was cut off by an ad that suddenly appeared on the overhead projector screen. "Purchase your life-size Issei Haidu, complete with real voice over." The quotes that followed did not help the situation the devils were in. "Quit jacking off to your power and put the lotion in the basket. I just hope you can deliver after this is over. If you want to dance with me, you will have to make much faster steps. No, the name I use the most is Okazaki Tomoya. This is my adorable friend Fuko." The quote stopped and the rest of the advert continued. "I now to allow him to experience all the pleasure Madara has banned him from." 3 words left Issei's mouth. The first was what followed by the fuck. His gaze now turned to Sona and asked, "How did they even get those lines that I said?" To this the heir shrugged and said, "I do not know. I do know that the Mayus do have an extensive network, though why they would use it like this is beyond me." Issei sighed. This time he just stood up and left the room. As he went he could feel the fear from everyone else in the room. "Why do I have to put up with this crap? What I want is to go down and seriously murder the guy who did this." Despite his murderous thoughts, his face was completely calm and serene. "If I do find out who this said individual or organization that are trying to make a living off me, I will take them to Madara." Now leaving the building, he saw that at the school gate the young man who he had called Kaupi was waiting. "I see that we meet again, Issei Haidu, or do you go by another name today?" To this Issei said, "What do you want from me? If you want me to talk to you, you got to do better than this." To this the man said, I would like it if we could go to a place more private. Issei in response said, I don't swing that way. Sure, he was being an ass to this guy, but this guy had an aura of a mega douche. Like he looked down on other because it was his birthright or some crap along those lines. Look, I came to this location because I was asked by a devil to. There is an angel in my house, and I'm not in the best of moods, so please let me be sullen and apathetic in peace. Now the man was a little shocked at what he just said. You are rather open that you deal with such otherworldly beings, they who try to suppress and enslave humanity. Issei was able to counter this by saying, what makes us any different than them? To this the man said, we have choice, we are not defined by nature to be one aspect, we can rule or serve, it all depends on what our actions are. Issei raised his eyebrow. Ah, so you are one of them, man for earth and all stuff, human united and all the other names. The man shook his head. I am Cao Cao, descendant of the man by that very name, I desire that man will not be under the influence of any other. To this Issei said, any other than you mean? Cao Cao looked at him, what do you mean by that? To this Issei said, if all things are true and all religions are false, then it was man who made up God to explain that which we cannot. It was then man that made the organization of religion, in it there are positions of power that are to be held by those worthy. Issei paused to make sure that his audience could follow, then said, if that is true then it is humanity that desires to be influenced by a higher power, and it was their choice to say so. It was not an argument that Cao Cao had not heard before, but he said, what you say is true, but should we limit ourselves because of the past, should we just bend our knee because other have done so? Issei took in a deep breath, he needed it for what he was about to say next, it was what Madara had taught him to say to idealistic fools. Wake up to reality, the strong oppress the weak, and those that are too frail to survive die due to their weakness. It is the natural order of the world, those alone die alone, and those who fight with friends die also with friends. If you wish to know what I am saying, it is that all things must have an end, nothing lasts forever. That said, it can resurface from time to time when it so desires to. I do not know what your cause is, but in the end the only thing that wars are fought over is power. Why is your conflict any different? At this moment Issei sensed that something was going to happen behind him. Now Issei had been with Madara long enough that he knew he should not turn around to see it. Instead he used his flying thunder god technique to teleport at the last second away, from what it was behind him. I have to give it to him, Issei Haidu is fast, very fast. A man who looked like some weird time of wizard said this. Cao Cao looked at him and sighed. Bayorg, I think it is safe to say that he is not going to listen to us, his views are twisted and warped. They heard a giggle and turned to see a female member of their group. I don't know, he is rather cute and is also quite handsome and has a way with words. Cao Cao now looked at the girl who was meant to contain the spirit of Joan of Arc. Jean, do you really carry the spirit of the Maid of Orleans within you? She pouted and said, I do, you big jerk, and what's it to you, it's not like you have a chance with me, Georg. Cao Cao sighed and said, enough both of you, we failed in this, from what we know Madara would not even look at us. Georg looked at Jean and said, she may be the cause of that, aren't you meant to be chaste like your ancestor? Cao Cao sighed again, how can the Maid of Orleans be her ancestor if the Maid of Orleans was as you say chaste? Georg had not thought of it like that, and the three of them decided to leave this down for now. It's a pity, with his strength our plan would have no need for a fail-safe. As he lamented over these words he had to think, what kind of man is this Madara to raise a child like Issei Haidu? I get the urge to stay away from him. He did not know how right his instincts were at this point, Madara was something else. Madara at this moment was discussing the alliance with the Archangel Michael. You desire myself and my disciple to be the mediators in this event, also to be on standby for enemy activity. The Archangel gave a gracious nod and said, what I desire is that we stop the fighting that has no benefit to us and try to rebuild our strength together. As I told you before, I do fear that there is a force in the shadows waiting to end us. Madara knew that this guy was meant to be an avatar of virtue and all, but he was also concerned for his enemies was a thing Madara would not do. Though he understood why the Archangel did this. You show concern for your foes, you stand by your role as an avatar of virtue and light, yet you do not curse the darkness, you are an interesting person. To this the Archangel returned the compliment and said, you too are an interesting person, you are proof that all can change if they desire to. These words were almost like Hashirama's, it made Madara smile, though for only a millisecond in time. If it not for your wings, your hair and your cloths, you could be mistaken for Hashirama. The Archangel was not able to determine if this was a compliment or insult. I believe they would try to contact you or at least Haidu, that way they can use you against us as I said before. Madara sighed, from what I can tell they may have already, though I know that he would not agree with them. The Archangel raised his eyebrow, oh why is that? To this Madara gave an almost evil smile. Let's just say I raised him to be his own master, all he does is tied to part of his code of living. The Archangel then smiled and said, for a man who is seen by many as a monster, you sure were able to raise a child well. To this Madara gave a smirk and said, no child that I raise would be an arrogant headstrong fool who looks down on others and believes that he is better than them because of who he is. Now the Archangel did not know that Madara was referencing a boy from his own clan who was all of these traits and more. Madara had recalled him and knew that he did not wish to even have anything to do with a child like that. I see you raised him to not flaunt who he is in front of other. Madara gave him a nod and said he still does it, though it is not his true feelings. I also taught him to enjoy the little things. The Archangel knew what he meant by this, little things such as acts and visual novels. Now standing up, the Archangel said, "It was a pleasure to chat with you and to be able to come to an agreement. I'll be in touch about that." Now standing up, he cast a smile to Asia and Rainer, Asia who cast her smile back to him, while Rainer ducked for cover. "You do what you see as right and I will do the same." Madara said this as the Archangel left the house. He now turned to see what Asia and Rainer were staring at. "What are you two looking at? If you so desire to, I can create a box filled with doors for you two to stare at all day." They took the hint and went to complete the task that were set to them. It was at this moment that Issei returned to the house. Madara noted that he had used his Flying Thunder God technique to enter. That meant that he was avoiding someone, or he was too lazy to walk. "I take it you saw what they had to show you." Issei rolled his eyes. "Yes, I did, though I would say it is not pleasing and you would be rather angry at it." To this, Madara gave him a blank look and said, "They made a what is it movie or series about you?" Bastard knew. Well, I guess I should inform him about the other part as well. It was the only thing Issei could do to get one up on Madara. "Yeah, they did. Also, they made a video game with you in it as a mentor to the custom character." Madara did not really know what a custom character was, but he said, "I know, I get 30% of all royalties." In his head, Issei thought, well, of course he would know, no one can do his voice. He had hit Issei, "Hey, didn't a guy by the name of Naoya Uchiha sound a little like Madara?" He did not pursue the topic any further and went to go dote on Asia. Asia, who was in the middle of doing the cloths, was quite happy with this. "I'm glad that you came to see me, Oni-sama." He had known that Madara did not believe in an automatic washing machine, so it all had to be done by hand. He did believe in taps, at least as a positive. Issei stood next to her and began to help her wash the cloths. Most of it was hers and Rainer's. Asia had noticed this too, but now was the first time she asked it. "Hey Oni-sama, does Madara-sama ever change his cloths?" Issei thought for a moment that he could lie and say that Madara did, but he decided not to. That is a good question, not that I know the answer to it." Asia sighed as she finished a shirt of hers. "Well, there are things you don't even know about him then." To this, Issei gave her a nod and said, "He tells me many things, many does not equal every, Imauto." She smiled at the mention of him calling her little sister. She liked the sentiment, not as much as she liked hers and Rainer's other idea, but she did like this. It was at this moment that Issei noticed Zenobia was watching them. You two look very close." She managed to whisper this. Issei did not know if she thought he did not hear her or not. To this, Issei said, "Of course we are. I'm here, Oni-sama, and she's my Imauto." A sudden jump he heard from Zenobia told him she did not expect him to hear her. Asia looked at him and said, Oni-sama, who are you talking to?" To this, Issei smiled and said, "A certain blue-haired girl who was watching us as we work. She should have just got stuck in and helped out." Issei had closed his eyes and said this with a smile on his face, but there was something about this smile that made Asia take a step back in fear. "Oni-sama, you look very scary when you make that face. Please stop." Issei stopped smiling and said, "I'm sorry, I did not mean to scare you." She looked at him and said, "I accept your apology." Issei gave a very loud sigh and said, "Zenobia, if you're watching us you can help us, if not leave us in peace." To this, what she did he did not expect. She came now into the laundry and began to help them with the cloths. Issei noted that she was blushing as she stood next to him at the basin. Now to add to his surprise, Asia sang Zenobia and Issei sitting in a tree. If there was a little blush in Zenobia's face, it was gone now. Her face was now completely scarlet. Issei, on the other hand, had learned to ignore such obvious taunts and said, "You wound me, Asia. I would much prefer to do that with you." Zenobia was able to pick up the joke, but Asia was not. She now turned scarlet and began to mumble. If that's what Oni-sama wants, then I won't object." To this, Issei looked at her and said, "You know that it was just a joke, my precious little Imauto." He added the last 4 words in, so she did not get a little upset at him. His tactic worked. She forgot that she had been the object of a joke. Instead, she said happily in her ignorance, "Oh, thank you, Oni-sama, you really are a kind person." In his head, Issei said, "No, I am really not. Madara raised me. I may be polite at times, but kindness is not one of my assets." Zenobia then asked him, "When will begin to train me?" To this, Issei did not look at her. His face was on the washing. "I will train you in time, but first things must be done. I cannot guarantee that you will become like me." Now both Asia and Zenobia noticed that he did not use the word strong, not that it was a big deal, but this was one of the early lessons Madara taught him. It is okay to call another weak until he proves your words wrong, then apologize to him for the insult. You must never overestimate your power and brag unless you already have a secure victory. These two went hand in hand with one another. Madara had made sure he knew this. Issei knew that what Madara made him do was for his own benefit. Madara had shown him his world and what he had done within it. Though Issei knew that he had not shown him all of it, Madara would never show him all of it, he was entitled to his secrets. Issei's face took on a silent and sad demeanor when he thought back to this. He could not recall who or what his parents looked like, sure he had photos of them, but his memory before he met Madara was hazy at best. Zenobia, who had a better view of his face, could not help but reach out and touch it. To her he looked so still, so lost in thought, it was almost as if he was a picture. Issei snapped back to reality with her warm and soapy touch. Issei just turned his face to look. He had stopped his washing. Asia, who had been so focused on her task, looked over at them and said, You too, when I see you like that look real lovey-dovey." It was at this moment that Zenobia blushed again and took away her hand, though to her surprise Issei blushed a little as well. Asia looked at him and said, "Oh, so you can blush, Oni-sama, don't tell me you've fallen for Zenobia and she for you." Asia did not know why, but she did not feel any jealousy of Zenobia, it was as if she was happy just looking at the two of them. "My song will soon come true, Oni-sama, then I will be an auntie." Issei looked at her, his eyes widening, and said, "Amado, stop, don't say things like that, it's not very funny." As she said, "But it's true, Oni-sama, you are in love with her," you even blushed. She was now putting on the annoying little sister who has to be right act. If Rainer thought her this, I'll have a word with her. They did not know that on the other side of the wall, Madara had heard all that had transpired. But the fact that they would have been even more shocked at was that he had smiled. Not a smile that said you would be dead in the next 5 seconds, or that he had just succeeded in some grand plan. It was small, sincere smile that expressed joy. He looked up at the roof, but in fact he was looking at where the stars would be. Somewhere out there was his homeworld, and Hashirama, well, at least his spirit and legacy. Quietly he spoke to himself, it is good for him to have moments like these, it is the little things that we take for granted that reminds us that we are human. Madara sat across from Serafal and Surziches, while Issei. To his left was Azazel and beside him was Michael. This was meant to be the talk of the alliance between the 3 factions. Madara had been invited due to the fact that he was acting as a mediator and bodyguard for Michael. Issei and a few wood clones of Madara's had been stationed around the school in secret. Now each of the faction's leaders had come with their champions. Surziches and Grafia, Surfal and her little sister, Azazel and Vali, the latter had a massive bandage and mechanical arm, the work of Azazel. Ria's Gremory and her peerage were there as well, that had a strange cross-dressing boy with them. When Madara had asked Issei about him, Issei had shrugged and said, "Don't ask me about that devil's taste, I'm not a friend." He was right though, he was not a friend. Also, ever since he had arrived, Vali had been casting murderous glances at Madara, not that Madara cared in the least. "Let us get to why we are here. I requested this meeting to put an end to the uneasy peace that we have been within ever since the end of the Great War." Michael was the one saying this. He then looked to Azazel and gave him a nod. Azazel then started to speak. "You may not have noticed, but there is a force that has been working in secret against our factions." Madara did not like the sound of his voice, but he knew that this fallen angel may be a pervert, but an idiot and fool he was not. Michael then said, "They have been taking great care not to be discovered by us and have used the conflict between us to their advantage." The devils at the other end of the circular table nodded and murmured among themselves. They had their own sources confirm this as well. "It is my belief that this force desires us to expand our resources against one another, then it will finish us off while we are weakened." Madara had already told Michael that this was a sound strategy. He had stated that it was the easiest way to remove multiple foes. Surziches now spoke, though it may be irrelevant. "What is the human who desires godhood doing here?" Madara could not help but sigh at that title and say, "Refrain from referring to me as that." Surziches felt cold sweat upon his back when Madara spoke. He had not forgotten what the man had done to him. "He is here as a mediator and guardian, in case we break out into combat, or if we are attacked." It was Ria's at this point who put her hand up like a shy child who did not want to ask a question, but needed the help. Michael looked at her and said, "Speak freely." Ria's heir of the Gremory clan. She then tried her best not to stutter and look foolish, both she failed at. Madara-sama, where is Issei-kun?" Madara raised an eyebrow at her. It was clear to all at the table, except Ria's, that Madara did not wish to tell her. "He is where he desires to be. I saw no point in having him around here." The lie, in truth, Issei was within the school premises. What they did not know was he was disguised as a Madara clone. "If that is all, can we please continue?" Ria's now noted that if she had ever thought Issei was scary, she was wrong. Compared to Madara, Issei was a joke. Man now wonder Issei mocked people when he is fighting them, a superiority complex oozes out of this guy. Then she recalled her first meeting with many humans and realized that she and her kind were exactly the same. Madara now looked over to Michael and said, "You should reach a conclusion soon." All of the faction's heads gave a nod, and then Madara noticed something that was very off about one member in the room. Madara then stood up and faster than any could see grabbed Vali by the neck and impaled him into the wall. Before any could rebuke him, Madara turned his eternal Manjikam Sharingan on. "They are coming." At that moment a huge explosion was heard outside the school grounds and many figures began to pour inside. Bali at this point activated his mechanical arm and punched Madara in the gut. He smiled as he did this. What caused him shock was the fact that Madara did not budge. In fact, he turned around and said, "You know, I almost felt that. Too bad you haven't tried to divide my power yet." At this he laughed and said, "Shinra Tensei." None saw it, but Madara had activated his Rinnegan and blasted a volley's head. Blood from the fallen devil come human hybrid spurted everywhere as his head was removed from his neck. Madara, now drenched in blood, turned to those present and said, "Prepare yourselves, the only I'm tasked with guarding is Michael." Not a lie, but not the truth. Michael had asked him to protect everyone, but Madara had said the alliance need to prove that it was needed. "I will fight, who will join me?" The Archangel stood up as he said this, and to his surprise Azazel, one who he would have thought would be rather conflicted, stood up. "I shall, it pains me to know I let two traitors in my midst." Surziches then stood up. "I won't let any say that the Crimson Satan ran away from a fight." Then all of them heard, "Beware servants of evil magical girl Levi Tan is her." Serapho made a magical girl pose and then smiled at all of them. Madara wanted to punch someone in the face, but he restrained. He could toy and destroy those who had come here with that same intent. He felt a powerful foe approach them, had begun. Issei on the outside had engaged the first wave of foes with Madara's wood clones. They had been doing well until a certain woman, or more like thing, popped up. A woman, if she was human, with tanned skin, brown hair tied up in a bun, wearing overly low-cut dress with a high slit. She also wore glass. Issei saw that as a weakness, but could not help but think, "She has to be a devil, I mean, who else dresses like a stripper? A fallen angel would have pulled out its wings by now." Issei saw her at first and thought her no threat. When some snake thing was absorbed by her body, that's when shit hit the fan. What the fuck, Maya's Madara's clones not doing anything against her. Issei at this point had engaged her after she had struck down the wood clone hedge to look like him. "Ahaha, so you're the Issei, hide you, or rather was." She began to laugh again. This really pissed of Issei. It did, to the fact that he decided to use his flying thunder god technique to come up right behind her to punch her square in the face. He had known he had already marked almost everything upon the school grounds, just in case he did come up against a powerful opponent. He also took the opportunity as she was sent flying to grab her by the arm and land a powerful kick into her stomach. What surprised him was that she used her head to smash him in the face. Issei noticed that she was strong, really strong, but she had one major weakness. She did not know who he was. Sure, he did not know who she was, but he knew as long as she thought he was just a wood clone, he was going to have the drop on her. Issei at this point jumped back and made 3 hand signs. "Those tricks won't work." She woman taunted him. She did not know what Issei was trying to do, but she knew she could avoid it. What she did not know that she was not in fact the target. Would release. Advent of a world of flowering trees. As if out of the ground, the buildings and basically anywhere he desired trees with flowers began to spring up, directly attack the forces around her. Issei used his chakra to direct the flowering trees into impaling the incoming forces. Each part of every tree was a weapon, from trunk to branch to flower. Those who managed to avoid the attack of the trunks were sliced open by the branches. Those of more skill who managed to either avoid or break the branches were caught up in the pollen of the flowers. Issei was immune to it, but knew his contracted allies were not so. He directed the pollen towards those who were yet to engage in the battle. The seductive woman who he had just priorly engaged had tried her best to avoid the trees and close the gap between them. Though due to her inexperience with fighting an Uchiha, or rather a Sharingan user, she made the fatal mistake of meeting his line of sight. Seeing his chance, Issei decided to go straight for the black flame. In the split second he had before he made his attack, only one thing went through his mind. When she absorbed that snake, she was able to best the Madara wood clones. Madara's attention must be elsewhere. At this point activated his Manjukum Sharingan and lit her face ablaze with Amaterasu. She screamed as the black flames licked and spread slowly across her face, causing her immense pain. Issei had to admit it was cruel of him to light her face on fire, but then again, to him a dead devil was the only one he really cared to see. Issei now looked to see a boy with a rather shitty expression on his face, the face of an emotionless child. His instincts kicked in and told him that this boy was his enemy and that he should be wary of what power this kid had. Issei noticed that the boy had a rather large shadow. No, in fact the shadow was so large that it covered the entire area around him and even the forest Issei had created. Issei moved to try to attack this kid, but a massive shadowy form blocked his path. It was around 200 meters tall and now looked down on Issei. Issei at this point realized that he had to activate his Susanoo to withstand the incoming blow. Cursing himself for weakness, he created a complete armored torso of his crimson Susanoo. It formed just in time to block the incoming attack, though Issei could feel in strength of his foe. Issei at this point noticed that more foes were flooding into the school grounds. This guy must be controlled by the weird expressionless child. Issei at this point noticed that the giant shadow had not split into 4. Issei saw that it had gone down from around 200 meters to 50. Due his Susanoo, it was clear to any who were watching that he was Issei Haidu. He released his transformation jutsu so he could focus on the fat at hand. That's it. Issei at this point made a hand sign and created one wood clone of himself. Okay, this is going to be risky for my eyes, but hell, might as well be damned for it all. Issei at this point allowed his wood clone to form its own Susanoo. But this time it was a perfect full-armored Susanoo now in height. It was the same size as its 4 opponents, but Issei had one mega advantage. While it faced off against the 4, he could take out the boy. At this point the wood clone Susanoo was in that same crimson humanoid dragon-like form, but this time it grew out an extra pair of arms, each held its own crimson blade. It then engaged the 4 shadow figures and began to slash at them. At first it seemed like he was doing no damage, well to the untrained eye it seemed so. But in truth he was doing a lot of damage, they were just regenerating. But then Issei used it, he pulled out again the Amaterasu, just this time he used it on the shadow that the other had split from. In this mere second of confusion the controller must have had when the body of his minion was unable to regenerate, Issei used the Flying Thunder God technique to appear behind him. He lunged forward, forming a wooden blade coming out of his fist. The use of the Flying Thunder God technique had made his own Susanoo dissipate. The 3 shadow figures turned and tried to defend their master. Issei felt his wooden blade bite flesh, just as he felt something pierce his own. Some sort of spear had pierced Issei in his chest and sent him flying through the school buildings. The pain that he felt was immense. In the millisecond he had before he found himself crashing through a building, he saw that his attack was none other than Cao Cao. Cao Cao had waited for the most opportune moment to strike. 2 of his allies and office had engaged Madara and were ready, keeping him busy. He knew he had to take out the devil friend Issei. He may have been an ally in another life, but he was far too deadly to be allowed to live as an enemy. Issei was unable to get back up, the spear that Cao Cao had punctured his chest with packed a punch. I see you were able to wound Leonardo and his Longinus Annihilation Maker. There was some amount of respect found in his voice. Any who were watching saw the weapon he held, the weapon capable of killing God. But you see here, the true Longinus is the most powerful of its kind. I'd warrant it could kill your master. Cao Cao now walked up to where Issei lay. You should have joined my side, then you would not be here dying. He looked down directly into Issei's eyes. You are going to die. You may have stood a chance with me if you faced my head on. But I cannot allow you to live. You have already burned off the face of Kateria Leviathan. Issei at this point no longer felt the pain, but allowed Cao Cao to think he was still in pain and dying. How much longer do you believe you will last? I have blown a hole in your body, right through, yet you cling to life. He now bent down so his face was right in front of Issei's. Tell me, is the strength that allows you to cling to life what your master taught you? Instead of saying anything, Issei shot his arm up and impaled Cao Cao's right shoulder. The man had sensed it at the last second and tried to pull out. His enhanced speed allowed him to avoid a fatal blow, but the wood sword that Issei had created and cut cleanly through his right shoulder. This in turn caused him to drop his true Longinus. Issei lifted himself up and threw Cao Cao as far as he could. He heard the man smash into one of the many broken walls of the building with a loud crack. The weapon called the true Longinus, it would seem that you aren't half as great without it. It was a casual observation. Cao Cao, who now managed to scramble to his feet, looked to see that Issei had his prized weapon under his foot. I see, so you do really desire it. Issei at this point knew he was being evil. So what if this is cruel? This guy did just impale me. Cao Cao made a dash to try to get to it, but Issei had predicted that and regained control of his advent of a world of flowering trees and used a few branches to smack Cao Cao away. Cao Cao noted that he had observed Issei's control over the forest before, but he had thought that was over when Issei began his battle with Leonardo. The pain that was searing through his arm made him drop to one knee. He looked up at the massive hole Issei's Haidu's chest, and he had to ask how are you able to move, let alone attack me? Issei did not answer him. He noticed that a certain black-haired little girl and 3 others were now approaching him. Cao Cao looked up and saw that she had come to cover his failure or force him to return. At this moment Madara appeared beside Issei. He turned to regard Issei and said, you should keep your guard up, that hurt didn't it? It was not a question with Madara, it never was. Madara looked out at the 4 in front of him. He knew that they were not to be underestimated. Then the little black-haired girl spoke. I request that you return the true Longinus to us. In return we will leave you be for now. Now Issei did not know what had happened, but the moment the fighting had broken out, this little girl and white-haired devil, as well as certain man with black and blonde hair, attacked Madara. Madara turned to Issei and said, do as she says, it will be better for us this way. Now Issei noticed that Madara's skin was not its normal color and in fact his skin looked rather gray, like while his hair was a shade of white. Issei turned to Madara, what are you alright? What happened to you? Your skin is rather gray. Issei failed to mention the horn-like headband that was around his forehead. Just after Seraphol finished her magical girl speech, Seraphol had just finished her magical girl pose, and Madara knew she must have a mental disorder to act like that in combat. It was at this moment when three figures burst in through the roof and landed in front of Madara, all in the room, except Madara took a step back at their appearance. One of them, a man whose hair could be seen as both black and blonde, commented, "I see he has already finished a volley." The man did not look very angry, but there was not doubt in Madara's mind that he was fuming. Beside him stood a man with white hair who looked rather similar to the Crimson Satan's queen. "I see, so we are late, Crom, you need to finish off the human." At this the man with black and blonde hair smiled and said, "Oh, it will be my pleasure." As he said this, he launched into an all-out barrage of fist. Madara in turn skillfully avoided them by using his Sharingan to predict the incoming attacks, stepping in a way to avoid them. Madara was unable to gauge the strength of his foe and decided to block on of the incoming fist. When Madara's palm met Crom's fist, the floor that he was on broke and he felt the ground under him begin to crumble. Madara now knew the strength of his foe, he also knew that it was not entirely strong enough to beat him. Madara in turn decided to strike back and sent a Susanoo limb to strike his foe. The blow did not connect, but as he could see that this Crom character felt the heat of his blow. At this point Madara followed up his attack by launching his punch into this Crom's stomach. All who were there heard the sound of bones or scales cracking, it was not pleasant. Crom for his part, to lessen the blow, jumped back at the last second, but he still felt the pain in his human form. He jumped back to where little girl was. "Office, I don't think I can beat this guy on my own." The little girl, or what others may have called Loli, gave him a nod. "It would appear we misjudged the power of Madara, here I will lend you some strength." A snake appeared out of her arm and jumped into the one she addressed as Crom's mouth. A small flash of light and Madara knew that his opponent's power had grown immensely. "Now, we will see if you still have your cocky attitude." As soon as he finished these words, he leapt at Madara, who in turn sidestepped him, but was caught by a blow from his knee. Madara in turn used his arm to dampen the blow and held his ground by activating his Rinnegan and increasing his own pull to the ground. This foe, he had grown stronger, but he is still not Hashirama. Madara at this point grabbed the man by his leg and flung him across the room into the wall, smashing it down. In the moment of respite, he had returned to the others in the room and said, "Get out of here, the damage that will be caused by my fighting style will engulf you all within it." All of them used their magic circles and were about to go when the white-haired man tried to interfere. Madara though was not blind to him and used a Susanoo limb to block his path. The loli who was called Office looked at him, she saw how he was able to take Crom's blow, even though the latter had just been powered up. "Stay back, Crom and Euclid, I will face him." Madara looked at her and felt a sense of power coming from within her, there was something about her that said her power was limitless. Then Madara felt it, a presence void of everything, this was her presence, so he had to ask. "Your power, it is the infinite void, you are not female, or rather you are not at all." She launched a barrage at snake at him, and Madara avoided it. But it was a trap, she jumped forward and landed a blow on Madara, he managed to block it with his arm, but the pain he felt was one he had not felt for a long time. His mind at that moment flashed back to the strongest and most talented Taijutsu user he had faced, Might Guy. The part of him felt excited at the prospect of fighting a powerful foe, it had been a while since he had faced one. The other part though had nothing nice to say about it. Making a single hand sign, he said, "Wood release." Wood dragon technique. The dragon made of pure natural wood burst towards Office, she in turn countered it with her snakes. Wrapping around it and trying to crush it, it was then Madara concentrated his chakra within it, causing it to explode. Using the dust that was kicked up in the air that blinded everyone else but his vision, he jumped forward and landed a kick on Office's face. She did not go flying, instead leaning back as his blow landed, she grabbed his foot and smashed him into the ground. Madara felt the pain as he smashed through the already damaged ground, but smiled, a clone of his jumped out of the ground behind her. Office dropped Madara and turned, "This is the real one." She grabbed the on behind her by the chest and was electrocuted. It had been a lightning clone. She managed to turn in time to see Madara say Shinra Tensei. The very next second she was sent off her feet, crashing away. Madara saw her return to her feet and noted that she had not taken any damage. Or if she did, her form was not showing it. Madara at this point realized that her power of the void was enough to recuperate her form when he dealt her damage. Not that he wasn't healing, but Madara now knew he needed a bigger display of force to show that he could beat her. Making 6-hand seals, Madara said, "Secret art of seals, ultimate sealing release." The entire area began to glow with power, and the infinite dragon Office had to cast a massive dome of snakes to try to contain the power that was being released. The snakes lasted just enough for the light to dissipate. But what the three attackers saw was not the same man they had been fighting. His skin had gone gray, and his face had grown a horn-like headband, his hair was a shade of white, and his eyes were now complete with circles. His cloths had changed as well, he now wore a full white cloak with reddish markings near its collar. The inside must have been black, due to the way the collar was, and he wore black long pants with gloves. In his hand he held a pitch-black scepter with an almost three-quarter circle at the top. The blue or purplish aura was glowing from him, and he looked at the three of them. Behind levitated 6 black spheres, Madara had now shown this office that he was far stronger than she had anticipated. He had his 6 truth-seeking balls just in case they needed a display might. It was not that he did not want to fight her, he knew due to his battle here, his wood clone would have been bested by an Issei level foe or a few levels below him. I believe we can get started, or would you rather not? Madara was giving them a choice, a value that Hashirama had taught him when Naruto and Sasuke had defeated 10 years ago. He would give his foes a choice. In truth, though he did desire them to stay and fight, it would be a good fight. The office looked at him and knew currently she could not beat him. To make matters worse, she had sensed Cao Cao's and Leonardo's defeat. If you are offering us a chance to leave, we will take it. The white-haired man, or rather devil, whom she had addressed as Euclid, had no problem with that. But Crom, the one whom Madara had sent flying into a wall, did. Office, why? We can beat him, I am sure of it, if we all pool our efforts together. He was about to say something else when the lowly shook her head. His power is akin to, if not greater than, the great Reds in this form. We should accept that and leave. She then pointed to the sphere behind him. Those balls hold in them the power of creation, I can sense it. I also suspect that skin flap on his head hides something else. Madara was able to guess she had sensed his third eye's power. After all, it was hard to miss. We shall leave now, who must not try to fight him. But this they left, but not before the one who had both black and blonde hair said, my name is Crom Cruach, the strongest of the evil dragons, and I will defeat you, man, you desire godhood. To this Madara flew up behind them to make sure they were keeping their word. Man who desires godhood, huh, I guess they don't know I already attained it. Present, Issei now looked at Madara as what Madara had confirmed as the Cow's brigade retreated. They had returned Cao Cao's weapon, though Issei did not wish to. So you really did have to go all out, huh? Madara cast him a sarcastic look and said, the entire area is not a desolate wasteland. No, I did not have to, I just wished to cause a display. He then turned around and weaved 12 hand seals and said, secret art of seals, ultimate sealing. An orb of black light now surrounded Madara, and when it slowly faded away, he was back to his old self. I was able to see that my foe held power that was beyond most. I called upon that form and its power as a challenge. Issei did not want to know how he still had the power of the 10 tails within him. It did not make any sense, but then again, he was Madara. Turning around, Madara saw that all the faction leaders who were present now had returned. We lost some of our own, but now we can see what this Cow's brigade are and who is behind them. Michael said this as he looked at Madara. There were a few times in his life where he felt fear. The feeling of Madara's transformation was one of them. But office behind it, the Cow's brigade are a threat to all 3 factions. I second Michael's decisions. As Azul said this, though he was still hurt about Vali's betrayal, he knew it must have been in their nature. Both Surziches and Leviathan gave their consent as well. They now all turned their gazes to Madara and Issei. Issei in turn looked at Madara to try and cast a line of vision onto him. Why are you all staring at me? I have done what I was asked to, though I do not believe the school will be in use for a while. They all took a look around. It was true, the school had been completely trashed. By the fighting, Madara knew that he and Issei were not the only ones involved in combat. The other had fought as well just away from them. So they did not get either way or their line of fire. Michael took a step forward and said, I propose that Madara be the head come mediator of this alliance. After today, who can doubt his strength? Surziches nodded in agreement. He had fought Madara. The power he felt from Madara today showed that Madara had just been playing with him. Seraphil had no problems with this. She was the one out of all of them who had the most contact with Madara. Azazul did not like it. Madara cared nothing for perverted ideas or anything like that at all. But he had to admit that Madara was above all of them. Issei may be on power with them if he went all out against a foe. So in turn he stated, I agree to. It would be rather nice to have someone from outside the 3 factions be the head that binds us together. Madara looked at Issei. He knew that Issei could have been this, but Issei at this point was trying his best to just stare at him. I'll do it as a mission from all of you, but Michael the first do expect payment for this mission. The Archangel gave him a nod and said I would not do any less. Madara then looked at Issei and said, we're leaving. It has been a long day, and we need not be away from the house any longer. Issei gave him a nod and used the Flying Thunder God technique to return them home. In his mind, Issei could not help but think, how long will I have to walk around with a hole in my chest? Why did no one notice it? Heck, wasn't that my favorite shirt that I was wearing? The moment Issei had got home, Asia had begun to fuss over him. Not that she was worrying him, but the fact that she was telling him not to be reckless. Onisama, you can't go about just letting yourself get beat up like that. She had been saying this for the last 5 minutes. Issei was not too pleased about that. Leave me be to rest Amato, also just to let you know I did win. It was at this point that Madara opened the door to his room and said, both of you shut up, I desire so quiet time for myself. Neither of the two wished to piss off Madara, so they stopped speaking. It would have been good from here on out, except for the fact that Asia had now taken to staring at him. Now she was changing her expression from angry to sad to sorry, and so on so forth, but Issei could only make a confused face to her. What in the world is she trying to say? Come on, I can predict actions and movements, but I can't read minds without some effort. It was not the fact that he had to put in effort that annoyed him. It was the fact that he had to resort to it to understand her and other girls. The first thing I am going to do when I wake up is go and get a new shirt, seeing as this one is now ruined. He ushered Asia out of the room and then took of his shirt and put on a new one. Having a hole in the center of his chest did feel a little weird, but he knew he could sleep it off. As if she had been peeking on him, she returned to the room as soon as he had put a shirt on. What? No, get out, I want to sleep. He did not yell for fear of incurring Madara's wrath, as well as he could not be bothered to. She shook her head and said, I will stay with Onisama until he is better, we all will. With this, the two other girls entered the room, and Issei sighed as he saw them. Well, I guess I can knock myself out to escape them. But that Issei made 3 hand signs and cast a genjutsu on himself, forcing himself to fall asleep. But he did not know that Madara had taught Asia, Rainer and Zenobia how to release genjutsu. Issei awoke to find that he had been slapped 3 in the face 3 times. Elsewhere at the same time, Archangel Michael and the rest of the Alliance were doing their best to clean up the mess that had been made out of Kuo Academy. It was at this point that Seraphil, one of the 4 magus, asked everyone, hey, was it just me or did Ace-kun have a hole in the middle of his chest? Michael was able to recall that Issei did indeed have a hole in the middle of his chest. I do believe that he did, Leviathan, but if it was of any concern he did not show it. It was at this that the Crimson Satan Surzich's Lucifer said, I don't believe that Madara was bothered by it, there must be more to both of them that we don't know about. The crimson-haired devil looked now to the sky. He has enough power to cause the Infinite Dragon office to retreat. At this moment his wife cum Queen and maid approached him, your eyes tell me that you're troubled. He turned to her and said, nothing gets by you, does it? That man Madara, I knew he was strong, but the gap between us is far larger than I thought. Grafia knew what it was that Surzich's meant. It may be so, as long as he does not turn on us we need not worry about him. She knew all too well that Madara's power had to be immense to even cause the Infinite Dragon to look at him. It was at this moment that Archangel Michael decided to lighten the mood by saying, it is good then that they have decided to side with us. All leaders at that moment gave him a nod. It was true that the 2 of them were still on their side. The Archangel now looked at the school as the replacing of buildings was in session. It was a shame that so much was destroyed. In truth, I did hope for there to be no violence at all. At these words, Azazel, who was nearby, had to scoff a little. That may be so, but you knew that the enemy would try to strike us before this alliance. It was true, the Archangel did know that. It is a shame all the same, though you lost most of all in this entire ordeal. Azazel did not want Michael's sympathy. Leave it be and allow me to get over it on my own. It is a shame, as you said, more so for the fact that he chose to betray those who gave him all they could. Seraphil had to agree with that, and she said, I was still unable to do much. Magical girl Levi Tan had to give center stage to Madara and Ace-kun. Riaz, who was now with them, asked, why don't you sound too sad about that? To this Seraphil replied by saying, I like to see Ace-kun fight. There is a certain presence he has that gets my magical girl heart all aflutter. She smiled and gave a little squeal as she said this Sona and turned face-palmed and gave a very loud sigh. Sona had seen the damage Issei had done to the school. Well, he will still attend classes tomorrow, no school or not. I mean seriously, he is an honor student, he should act more like one. Riaz, it was beyond her capacity not to say something witty. Well, Sona, I am sure he desired to act like the only male member of the student council, and now does he? Sona did not know how to counter that, and all she could say was, no, I did not mean for him to be like Saji. Riaz now looked at her best friend and rival and asked Sona, do you really think any one of us can pull that guy in line? She shook her head. The only one he listens to is Madara, or what Madara would expect him to do. Issei was now enjoying his sleep. After he had been slapped in the face, he had create 3 wood clones who ushered out the 3 girls. Before he fell asleep, he made sure to create that they could not get in. To the point where he summoned a wall in front of his door. Asia and the 2 others had tried to open the door, but since it opened inward and the door would not budge, it was impossible. Well, I do suppose Onisama is a little angry that we slapped in the face. Zenobia at this point said to her, I think we were given the wrong information about how to release his genjutsu. Rainer now looked at both of them and said, oh no, I believe we were given the correct information. We used excessive force of our own volition. She was right, they had, so now they were paying the price. Madara saw all of them gathered outside Issei's room and said he created a wall on the other side of the door so you cannot enter. Zenobia, who had been with them just a short time, was still a little surprised at how a guy in armor could move so silently and almost be right about everything. I can tell you must have annoyed him. Madara said this as he passed the 3 girls and left to his own room down the corridor. I'm just asking, have we ever seen what is inside Madara's room? Both Asia and Zenobia now looked at Rainer as if she was mad. That guy reduced an entire army of fallen angels to ash as if they were nothing. I don't want to know what he keeps in there. Asia's ears perked up at this, and she said, you saw him fight, how close were you to him? Zenobia looked down at the blonde and said I was far enough away, but it was still horrifying to lay eyes upon, even if I was on his side. At this Rainer gave a small shudder when she had asked Issei about Madara. Issei said the gap between them was too large to describe in regular terms. Madara, who had heard the entire conversation, appeared out of his room and said I would advise you to be a little more discreet when you speak of him. All three of them almost jumped when he said this. I say this due to the fact that there will be many who will try to seek out any flaw that I may possess. Due to this you will also be targets. He was not threatening them, in a way he was, but he was also giving them a warning. Asia, the one who was most comfortable with Madara, was able to ask him, do you mean that in the days to come we will all be in danger? Madara gave her a nod and said that is true, you have been granted some form of shelter here, but all things come to an end in time. Asia gulped and so did Rainer. Zenobia was not too fazed by this, though it did give her pause. You will need to stand on your own 2 feet very soon, if not you will fall and you will die. Madara then vanished back into his room and left the three of them to ponder what he said. Asia looked at her 2 fellows and they all gave each other a nod and returned to their own rooms. How they would was beyond them, but the fact that they had to was not. They needed to become more than just dead weight dragging Issei down. The office, who was now in an unknown location, was replying the image of Madara's transformation in her mind. She did not like it. The Great Red was meant to be the only one stronger than her. The fact that a man could attain such power was beyond her. Is he even from our world? She had to ask herself this as she looked into the world. His power, is it from another world? Are there more like him? She had to find a way to beat him or to get him to defeat the Great Red, then she could have her home back from the overpowered ass. She still had no idea what was under that flap of skin on his head. It was as if he was hiding a weapon that was even more powerful. Did he hold back the full extent of his power? Was the change we saw a premature one? She now turned her focus to a replay of Issei when he fought against Cao Cao. She was able to see that he was indeed harmed by the true Longinus, though it was unable to kill him. It was then that she noticed that no blood spilled from his chest, as if it was missing. She stood up and said, I have it, his chest. It is not that of flesh and blood, but some other substance. She knew that this had to be the only explanation. She then recalled how Madara's skin changed to a different color when he transformed. She now looked carefully at Issei's chest. Sure enough, the chest had a similar color, not the same but similar. She now turned to the white-haired demon behind her. Euclid gave a nod in agreement. It would seem that we require a sample of Issei Haidu's chest tissue to study. The office looked at Euclid as if he had said the most ridiculous thing ever. We may be able to overpower him, but that man is still close to him. She was right, with Madara so close to Issei they would not dare attempt it. If we can separate Issei Haidu from Madara, then we will be able to collect the samples. The office now looked to Euclid as if asking for his opinion. Not to shatter your plan, but Issei Haidu has the ability to teleport at will. The office turned to see Cao Cao. His wounds had not healed, but he was up on his feet. You managed to land a blow on him, why can't I? Cao Cao shook his head. He was too preoccupied with Leonardo to notice me. He then turned to Euclid. He would not simply stay put and allow us to attack him. The office now looked at Cao Cao. She did not trust the man, but knew he had his uses, and she knew he thought the same of her. You say he will flee when he sees us? Cao Cao gave her a nod and said I have no doubt that he will, or at least he has been told to do so by Madara. That seemed to be the more likely occurrence. We will have to wait then for our opportunity. There must be a way to catch them off guard. Euclid said this, but Office shook her head. It would be impossible to catch him off guard, the boy maybe. Issei at this moment had woken up. He grumbled as he moved himself out of his bed. It has not even been 2 hours yet. He absorbed a wooden wall into the structure of the house and was almost hit with a door in his face. Oh, I see you're awake. Issei's vision was a little blurry, but he was able to tell that this was Zenobia. One, because of her voice, two, the blue blur must have been her hair. Rubbing his eyes, Issei asked, so what can I do for you? Though I have to ask, why did you almost hit me in the face with the door? Zenobia did not know what to say to this, but she tried nonetheless. I just wanted to try and open the door to see you and see if you had your cloths on or not. Personal preference would be with your cloths off. Issei knew that only one man could have this voice, and it was Madara. Issei had not heard all of it, but knew that if it was Madara it would be mocking Zenobia. I'm sorry, I did not fully catch what you said, but it must have been something condescending. Madara gave him a shrug and walked off, saying, so you are at your most vulnerable when you have just healed from a mortal wound. Issei at this point was able to hear that and said, I bet anyone else would be the same or worse. Madara ignored him and just left the two of them alone. Issei then turned to her and said, well, I'm going to go have a bath. You can go do what you want, as long as you stay away from my PC, my games and anything else in my room. It was at this Zenobia had to admit that Issei did have a lot of Madara in him. She knew though if she said that he would not take it so well, or well at all. Issei looked at the expression on her face and said, what, do you think that Madara and I look alike? She knew better than to answer him and just shook her head. Shaking his head, Issei began to walk off when he realized that he did not have a towel or change of cloths. Returning to his room, he got out his change of cloths and noticed that Zenobia was sitting on the ground in the center of the room. "What the heck are you doing?" She looked at him and said, "I am waiting for you to return, there is something that I wish to ask you." Issei looked at her and gave a very loud sigh. "Yeah, I'll get to it when I get to it, but I'm going to have a bath first." She then said, "Won't it hurt to have a bath with that wound still not being fully healed?" Issei gave a very loud sigh and then sat down on the ground in front of her. "Okay, I get the point, what did you want to know?" She almost smiled but knew she had to keep her composure or Issei would just leave and said, "I want to know, how did Madara train you, how did you become so strong?" To this Issei gave an even louder sigh and said, "A secret is no good if half the world knows it." He then stood up and said, "If I were to train you, I would not do it the way he did, not in the slightest." She looked at him and asked, "Was it really that bad?" Issei gave yet again another sigh and said, "Girl, you have no idea what that guy calls training, believe me, you're better left off being in the dark about it." He closed his eyes and recalled the first time he had ever been forced to kill another human being. In the memory, Issei around the age of 8 now stood over about 12 dead bodies. It was raining, his breath was heavy and his body sore. He had killed them, though there was no blood on his hands. Issei felt as if there was, it was as if their ashes burned him as they were near. Issei was short of breath, but he continued to move forward. Madara had given him these instructions before sending him into this world. Issei recalled that Madara had said, "You must be on alert there I cannot help you for I myself cannot enter, you must kill those who come to kill you." It was due to his hesitation to kill that he had messed up his first task in this world. He had not wanted to at first, but in a blind flash when his life was in danger he had killed them all. His eyes began to water and blood spilled forth from them. He knew it was because he had not gotten used to these eyes. He was also not used to the body modifications yet. These eyes were given to him near his exit the first time from this world. Issei, as Madara had instructed, was able to rescue a man by the name of Izuna from death. But due to Issei's inexperience and hesitance to kill Izuna had been dealt a fatal wound from a white-haired man. Within the confusion of the battle, Issei had managed to bring that man back to the location from which he entered this world. The man had surrendered his eyes to Issei upon seeing a reflection of Madara in Issei's eyes. Issei had then left the body for his clansmen to find and return to Madara. How he managed to return to Madara was beyond his understanding. Madara had shown some remorse for the death of that man Izuna. Issei then underwent the eye transplantation that left him with the eyes he had now. At this moment he had to remind himself that he was still away from Madara and drenched in the rain. He knew he had to leave and fast, his mission was complete and all he needed to do was to that location. "This one is an Uchiha, watch out." Issei now looked up to see two men, one white long dark hair with tan skin wearing red armor of a short Madara wore. The other white shaggy hair, fair skin with 3 red markings upon his face, and wore blue armor. "Brother, he is but a child, what could he possibly do?" To this his brother, the white-haired man, pointed to the corpses at Issei's feet. "You should ask them what he is capable of, they have clearly seen it." Issei took a step back. He had seen these two before, and Madara had warned him not to cross their paths. "Hashirama and Tobirama Senju." Issei said these words in only a whisper, but both of the two legendary shinobi heard him. "He knows of us, brother, it would be better to kill him now, rather than let his crucible of hatred consume him." Making a hand sign and calling upon as much chakra he used would release. Great forest technique. Both men were evidently shocked that the boy could use this. Hashirama, the man in the red armor with black hair, simple summoned his own to counter it. While Tobirama jumped away from them both. "Brother, how is it that he is able to use your jutsu?" It was not a question, it was a demand, one the white-haired man clearly wanted answered. His older brother now looked at him and said, "What? Why are you asking me for the answer?" Then it hit him and he looked at his younger brother and said, "What, did you think I was in love with an Uchiha lady? You did, didn't you?" Tobirama noticed that Issei was trying to get away, but for Issei's misfortune, Tobirama had planted markings all around them. Issei did not get even 3 meters before he found a blade at his throat. Issei knew that one move, and he was dead. Tobirama now looked down at him, there was no hatred in his eyes, but there was a sense of justice in it. "Brother, stop this madness, should we go down to the level that we kill children now?" His younger brother looked at him and said, "Have you forgotten Atama or Kawurama?" Issei now knew he was at the mercy of Tobirama, who at this point really had none to spare. He is skilled enough to kill 12 fully grown men, can you not see that, brother? Issei at this point knew there was no point to hope beyond hope that he could survive. Closing his eyes, he accepted his fate and waited for the blade to cut his head off. But it never came. Instead he heard fire release. Dragon flame release on technique. Ino looked up to see Madara Uchiha standing over him, but it was not the Madara he knew. No, this Madara was much younger, this world's Madara. "Kid, what are you waiting for? Retreat back, I'll deal with these two." Issei did as that Madara had instructed and fled. He knew not what would happen, but he knew he had to get out and fast. He had managed due to his new eyes to completely remember what it was that Tobirama had used to teleport to him. He also was able to recall how the white-haired man had done it. He had returned and again he was unable to recall how it was he returned from that location or how Madara was able to bring him back. He had told Madara about what had happened. Madara in turn had scolded him for even trying to attack the two of them. But at the end he said, it is good to see that my past self has at least a little care for his fellow clansmen or those he thinks are clansmen. It was now that he turned to Issei and said, I now will have to develop your skills myself, in time I will send you there again. Present. Issei now opened his eyes and looked at Zenobia and said, like I said, you're better off being left in the dark about it, just think of it as rather harsh and brutal. That was not all true, there had been some times that were close to good times. But never was it pleasant, no it could never be, and he knew that his strength had come at a price. A price that none other than Madara could bargain for and none other than Issei could pay. I shall leave now for my bath, you need not stay here. But that Issei left Zenobia still sitting in his room staring at where he once stood. What Issei himself did not know was that he had stood in front of her for a good 5 minutes without opening his eyes. Zenobia said softly to herself once Issei had left the room, what he has gone through, he does not wish to even recall it to others, how much pain did he have to bear? As if on cue, Madara said to her within the confines of her own mind. What if the Issei you see is just a mask he wears in front of others, only when he is truly furious does his real nature leak out. Issei awoke to find that he was in a world filled with colors and only colors. So you must be Madara, I thought you had black hair. Issei looked up at the giant figure then sighed, why was it that anyone could mistake him for Madara? Yeah, who are you, what are you, a friend of office, or something like that? The big red gecko managed to frown at him, then laugh. Oh no, I'm not a friend, but do please think of me as the annoyingly awesome older brother hers, I'm the Great Red. Issei raised an eyebrow and said, yeah sure you are. To this the Great Red gave a very loud sigh and said, so I heard you had power similar to my own, I wish to see it. Issei then raised an eyebrow, and if I don't? To this the Great Red sighed again and said, then I will step on you and you will die. Issei saw the incoming foot and quickly activated his Susanoo. He made a full Susanoo and was able to watch and hold the Great Red's foot for about a minute. Issei made 3 hand signs and said wood style wood dragon jutsu. But more than one appeared and now were pushing against the Great Red's foot. In response to this the Great Red applied more pressure and Issei could see that his wood dragons were going to break. But at the last minute the Great Red stopped and laughed. You know, that is more fun than I had in years boy, years. Issei was now 100% sure that this guy was a nut job and not related to the evil loli he had seen earlier. Tell you what, I'll give you a special treat, rather than how do I say kill you for coming in here, I'll allow you to go to another reality. At this Issei lost his cool and said, what do you mean coming in here, I woke up here, for all I know you put me in here. The Great Red laughed at his display of anger and said, well it seems that Madara does have a temper, despite what I heard I knew I could make you snap. It began to laugh again and this was really annoying Issei, but he managed to maintain his calm and said, I see now why you're hated by your own, let me guess, his office trying to kick you out of here. To this the Great Red said, hey you know that is not very funny, but yeah I believe she is after all, she thinks I am very noisy and all. Issei raised his eyebrow and said, well she is not lying about that, you do have a very loud voice. At this the Great Red began to laugh again and said, well I can see that you really are a man among men, Madara Uchiha, you're not from this world are you? Issei did not reply either because he may die if this being found out he was lying to him. Or Madara may kill him or worse for pretending to be him. I see, not really for conversation about your origins then, well to business, I want you to go to another world and kill / stop an apocalypse. Issei looked at this thing and gave a very loud sigh, why me man, why can't it be like anyone else? To this the Great Red said, well I suppose your pupil would suffice, no need to say that the world I am would send him to would be an apocalyptic world. To this Issei could only say, yeah, I believe I got that the first time you said it. The Great Red then gave a laugh and said, you sure do know how to make me laugh. The Great Red then continued to laugh to the point where Issei wanted to tell him to shut up. Oh do forgive me, it has been such a long time since a being of your strength has come along, though I must admit though you could transform and all. To this Issei said, yeah, but that is only for dire situations and whatnot Before the Great Red could answer, another voice rang out in this void. Yes, dire situations, beings who believe they are gods, people who desire to crush others and any who oppose Hashirama's will of fire. Issei almost soiled his pants at this, there were not many, no there was only one person who could make Issei feel this way. That was the real Madara, the man who had raised him and made him into what he is now. The Great Red turned to see who this intruder was and then said, what are you, Madara's disciple, are you more powerful than Madara behind him? To this Madara said, to answer you, yes I am more powerful than him, but to be more precise, he is my disciple. The Great Red turned to look at Issei and then back to Madara, he turned again to look at Issei and then back to Madara. Then his overseas brain came to one conclusion, I summoned the wrong one didn't I? To this Madara gave him a nod and said, as if any could summon me, by the way Issei, you will not how apathetic I am when I am around others, and you will be the same if you wish to copy me. Issei could only nod, he was waiting for the meteor to be dropped on his head. Madara looked at the Great Red and said, you wish to fight me, very well then, but I do ask you to let me reach my full power first. The Great Red gave him a nod, and Issei witnessed the transformation that Madara had taken on twice before. Madara made 6 hand signs, and then yelled out Secret Art of Seals, Ultimate Sealing Release. Issei watched as light began to shine from Madara, and he had to cover his Sharingan in order not to damage it. But he still stole a glance at the glory of Madara's godlike transformation. The glimpses he saw were truly awesome as in the op part. Madara's hair grew and took on a white color, as well as his skin grew to a grayish color. His eyes were now that of the Rinnegan, and his cloths were replaced by a black pant and a white robe. Issei noted that Madara grew 2 horns again, but the skin flap was missing. No, this time he had a third eye. This eye was opened wide and had what Issei could see as a fusion of the Sharingan and the Rinnegan. Even though Issei as on the other side of the Great Red, he could feel the power that Madara had just summoned into him. Issei now was able to recall why he feared Madara as well as respected and all but worshipped him. Madara now turned all 3 eyes to the Great Red. I do believe this is what you wish to see. The Great Red gave a roar and said yes, this is what I wanted to see. The Great Red flapped his wings, and Issei had to brace himself in order not to be blown away. Madara at this point could see that the Great Red was ready to attack, and he formed 4 truth-seeking balls around him. At this moment the Great Red paused for a moment before he realized what power made Madara's attack. He pulled back, but he must have known he was too large to dodge the incoming attack. Madara launched all 4 of high truth-seeking balls at the Great Red, who in turn managed to create some sort of shield. Madara however disappeared along with his attack moment before the truth-seeking balls come in contact with the field that Great Red had created. As if out of nowhere Madara then reappeared within the field, and this time his truth-seeking balls had transformed into their arm variation. These arms grabbed the Great Red and then shone right before they exploded. Issei swore for a moment that he saw the explosion disappear, then reappear. Issei saw the Great Red take the hit but not budge as the light blinded his vision. Issei felt the shock wave of the explosion send him flying, but he managed to land and keep himself ground and strained to open one eye. After the light itself faded, Issei saw that the Great Red was unharmed, or at least appeared to be. Haha, that was a good one, oh I felt that alright, remind me not to get hit by that attack ever again. Issei noted that the Great Red must have taken some damage, though it may not have been too much. Madara at this point said in said state, I am unable to defeat you, this fight is now pointless. The Great Red though laughed and said, oh that hurt, more than even little office can do, I see now why she chose not to fight you. Madara did not care for his praise and said, you are able to alter reality to what outcome you desire, to face you is pointless. To this the Great Red stopped laughing and said, oh that is rich coming from you, very rich, you think I did not notice what you did little man. Madara scowled. It became clear to Issei that he must have used Izanagi to land that his on Great Red. Though how his eyes had not bled was beyond him. Some Madara, I do what I want, I have no doubt. Issei though to himself as he recalled how freaking overpowered at time Madara was. He now looked to Madara who was performing his secret art of seals, ultimate sealing. Issei knew that this meant that the fight no matter how short it was over. His body slowly began to return to normal, and his clothing appeared out of nowhere as well as his skin becoming more colored and his third eye vanishing. Issei did not say it, but the third eye really freaked him out, rather Madara with a third eye freaked him out. Rin Sharingan, man I must get one of those. I see, so you really are not going to fight my anymore, that is too bad, though you have been the best in a long time. The Great Red now gave a long sigh and said, hey, I do intend to send one of you to that other earth though. Madara now looked at Issei who just shrugged at him. He now looked back at the Great Red and said, I cannot leave for there are many who have laid their faith and leadership on me. To this the Great Red turned to look at Issei who looked at Madara. Now it was Madara's turn to shrug. You have traveled through worlds before, why should this be any change anything? To this Issei said, wait, do I get a choice in this or are you going to what, throw me through a portal and be like see you later? At this the Great Red gave a small coughing noise and Madara then said, I would take that as a yes. To this Issei sighed and asked, okay, what the hell is going on there that I would need to go, why not ask an angel or any other good thing to go? The Great Red then said, cough, cough, you're just that but stronger than them. Issei could see the I'm like sweat drop on the Great Red's head. Oh, I see how it is then, why don't you go there? To this the Great Red replied, I am the Great Red of the Apocalypse, hint, hint, the word apocalypse is not a good one. Finally Madara said, stop being in a pain and just listen to him as he tells you what he is going to do to you. He then added on, if you're worried about the people who live in the house, I will look after them. Issei then gave a very loud sigh. He knew when Madara gave his word, he would stand by it, for him at least. Fine, fine, so where are you sending me? Also why are you wanted to stop the end of a world? Kind of contradictory, isn't it? To this Madara said I fighting for the will of fire is like that as well to many. Issei at this moment gave up and said okay keep your reason, so where am I going? To this the Great Red said a planet called Earth, I believe I said earlier. Issei at this point closed his eyes, how could a being with this much power be like this? He recalled that Madara had said the same of Hashirama. Great, this planet Earth, I kinda was born there anything else that I should know by the way. At this he felt Madara punch him on the back of his head show some respect, I can't save you in case he gets in a bad mood. At this Issei shut up, not because he was afraid of the Great Red, sure he was powerful, but he had seen what Madara did to people and was afraid of that. So as I was saying I will be sending you to this alternate universe, by the way once you're there you will have to find a way back on your own. Issei raised an eyebrow and was about to ask a question, but Madara answered him first. It is likely that in the world you go to, there is no gods, angels, devils and the other type of angels, that would also mean that there are no dragons correct? To this the Great Red gave a very solemn nod no dragons, that is correct. Madara then showed off his massive and possible too massive intellect by saying that would mean Great Red can only send things into it. Issei then said well isn't that great one. He said this with a rather rude tone, one because he knew that he was going there if he wanted to or not. 2. The Great Red was not all that great if he could only send him there. You know what I don't even care anymore can we get this over with and be done with it? The Great Red laughed and said yeah, that's the spirit, also if you see anyone you like don't hesitate, you kids could be the future of that world. Issei at this moment looked to Madara who just said, as long as the Uchiha live on, I'm okay with it. Nope Madara was definitely not okay with it, but then again Madara was not going to go argue with Big Red over there. If you do, make sure you to give yourself fully, if I so much as find a harem, I will torture you. Great Red wanted to ask why he would do that rather than kill, but Issei knew what Madara meant when he said torture. Madara at this point said I will take care of the ones under your charge, I will also deal with this cow's brigade, so don't waste any thought on that. Issei gave Madara a nod and in return Madara gave him a smile, a genuine smile. Issei returned the smile and said so being thrown into another universe, so what's new, other than nothing except I don't know where I'm going. To this Madara replied you will be the one to save that world, that's the difference. Issei gave the man who had raised him a nod, then looked up at Great Red who said oh no, you keep having your father and son moment. Both of them gave a sigh at that, and Great Red said I sure hope you are ready for what happens next, are you sure you can leave just yet? At these words as if out of nowhere Madara pulled out 2 items, one was his Clannad visual novel, the other was his Tomoyo after visual novel. You may desire to play these where you are going. Issei smiled it was one foe the few occasions that Madara showed he watched, and that he cared. Tell Zenobia, Asia and Rainer I said good luck, tell Riaz not to act like a slut, tell Sona to bear with Serafal, and tell Serafal to grow up. Madara said to him I'll do that, though how they react is up to them. Issei laughed at this and said oh I have an odd feeling that you will be fine. Madara raised his eyebrow to inquire what that is meant to men, but Issei knew that he knew. Take the name Uchiha with you and do what you know is right, if you have to be more to your true self then be so. Issei's face lost all emotion at the mention of his true self, I'll do my best not to be him if you don't mind. In response Madara gave him a shrug and said do what you believe to be is right, also don't sully the name of either the Uchiha or the Senju, you have both blood in your veins. At this point Issei wanted to say oh and whose doing was that now, oh wait yours. But he didn't, he knew it may be a while before he sees Madara again, or not. At this moment Madara gave Issei a bag he pulled out of nowhere. The Great Red had to say where do you take stuff from, I can do that, but then again I can do anything. Madara then said artistic license. The Great Red narrowed his eyes and said well played little human well played. Okay as much as I hate to interrupt your lovely father and son moment, the time that the portal is open may pass and you need to go. He gestured to the portal and Issei stepped through it and did not look back. Madara looked at the Great Red and asked so was that it? The Great Red shrugged, then looked at the portal as it vanished, there are things beyond even my power, you must know that. Do you know where you sent him, can you really know bring him back? The Great Red said nothing is beyond me, but then again I am not the all and end all, so I really don't know. Madara raised an eyebrow then said so you can, but it is not something that you can casually do. The Great Red gave Madara a nod and said oh if you do leave, feel free to come back anytime. To this Madara said I won't but thanks for the offer. As Madara teleported away he said I have a brigade and a little dragon to crush. The Great Red stared at where Madara had been for a while after he left. Man, he has issues, I can't decide if he likes or hates that kid, oh never mind I wonder how that kid is doing. At an unknown location in the other world, Issei now slowly began to see his surroundings, he from what he could tell was in front of some sort of school. He sensed as his vision began to clear he could see people were staring at him. No they were not staring at him, they were rather more like they were observing him, as if he was some sort of alien monster that fell out from the sky. Issei noticed that he had his expressionless face on and decided to raise an eyebrow and take a step closer to this group. He could see that the majority of them were female, or rather the boys were hiding behind the girls. Well, you can say this world has no male pride, but hey, I'm not going to judge them, some women are scary, actually I can't name any. Issei noticed a certain girl in a uniform of purple with a dress with frills approaching him. He noticed that she had her eyes almost shut, yet she probably from the way she walked could see fine. He also noticed she had a smile on her face. Issei could not tell if this was genuine or painted on her, he did not care. The other girls and boys who Issei presumed were students at this school took a step back in fear as she approached them. You are an intruder here, may you please leave? It was more of a request than a challenge, so Issei decided to humor this girl and say sure, can you tell me where I am and in what direction is the nearest city? Sorry, I'm not at liberty to say that, but if you please leave that would be appreciated. Issei now looked at strange slit-eyed girl and said I get the feeling that you were just stalling for your reinforcements to come. She looked taken aback, but Issei shot her a playful smile. Oh, no problem, beating armies of people is what I do best, but in this case I rather not. At this point Issei made a single hand sign and used his camouflage jutsu to hide himself. But before he did this he gave the girl a wink and said, catch me if you can, Brock. But that he vanished from their sight, leaving them confused to what just happened. Issei fled the area, not wanting to fight them, yet the big red lizard said this world needs help to stop the apocalypse or something like that, fighting them would only hinder my current goal. He reached the seaside, I might as well make a boat. Weaving two hand signs, Issei created a wooden boat by the water, pushing it and jumping in, he used his camouflage jutsu on himself and his boat. Oh well, the world can wait, I can take a nap in the meantime, I was rudely awakened. Has been about a day since Issei had vanished, been transported to another dimension, and Madara had already had it up to here with Asia's constant pestering. When will he come back? How long will he be there? Will he get married while he's over there? What if time is faster over there and he has a family? Madara did not need to hear it, most of his day was now spent trying not to kill her, as well as the two other girls. How he put up with this is beyond my understanding, it is far more tiresome to hold back my power. Then came a question that was less annoying and more relevant to Issei. It was the blue-haired woman who asked him it. Madara, Issei's power, the red dragon armor, something he called it, he said to gain it, he had to kill his closest friend. Madara was eating ramen at this point, though he did not know why. So you wish to learn how he gained his Manjikam Sharingan? She gave him a nod, and the two other girls, Asia and the fallen angel whose mind Issei had toyed with, also looked at him. I warn you, it is not a kind story if that is what you wish to hear. Zenobia took in a deep breath and said, I will not flinch no matter how gruesome it is. She looked at him with determination in her eyes, the same as certain blonde-haired boy had 10 years ago. It annoyed him a little. So be it, the truth of the matter is my brother from another timeline gave his own eyes to the boy who I raised. It was at this point he finished eating his noodles and said, do you have any questions? All of them in unison fell over and hit the back of their heads on the floor. Madara took note of the fact that he had seen many a thing on the TV or in manga. They must have good teamwork to be able to pull that off, perhaps I did undervalue them. Zenobia was the first on her feet. That's it, I thought you had more to say. To this Madara gave a rather sinister smile which caused the other two not to stand back up. I did, I was just asking if you understood what I said so far. The visible tick mark appeared on her head, but then she remembered who it was who sat before her, and her tick mark vanished. Though I don't intend to say anything else. It was at this point that Zenobia found that she was no longer within the dining room. She was now outside in what appeared to be a village. It was nighttime, she saw Issei with a young man, she moved closer to hear what they were saying. As she moved closer, Madara spoke to her in her head. You may notice that this is not real, it is not, you wish to know where he got his power from, this is the location in the event. Madara's voice then said, you are but a ghost here, unseen and unheard, you need not fear them. When the voice stopped talking she moved closer to the two. Do you really wish to go through with this, Itachi? Do you believe we have the power to defeat him? To this the man called Itachi gave him a short nod and said, I do believe that we can change the future for the better. Issei gave him a nod in reply. You friend's other eye, the one the old man had, where did you put it? After you retrieved it for me, I put my friend's eye in a safe location. Issei accepted that was all he was getting from him. I'll take that you will use them when you need to. Itachi gave him a nod. Issei, you never told me your age, did you? In reply Issei gave a shrug and said, I am 14, recently, we should get going, this man may not be the real Madara, but he is going to be hard to defeat. I will have to agree with you there, for the forced death of my clansmen and the death of the 4th Hokage, he will pay. Issei gave him a nod and said, well, if you're done with it we have company, and not the kind I would invite into my house, heck I wouldn't want to live in the same town as this guy. Itachi almost sighed. Issei was able to make light of everything, no matter how serious it was. Itachi now looked at the woods that were in front of them, he could see that their target was here. What is this? The repentant killer and child have come to kill the devil and make amends. This man wore an orange mask and covered his body in black clothing. Please tell me this is some pathetic fairy tale. It was at this point that Issei spoke up. Ah yes, we have come to kill the devil, and in fairy tales the devil never wins. It was now that the two of them drew their tent and clashed with this man. He was a lot stronger than he appeared to be. But so was Issei, to the point where this man pulled back away from the two of them. It would seem that you and I are the same in a sense, child. To this Issei said, oh, more than you know. Without any words he made four-hand sign, and large amount of trees began to burst out from the ground. Even his ally was shocked at this, not to mention his foe. But this alone was not enough to scratch their opponent. He nimbly dodged the trees and branches and seemed to phase through some of them. You won't ever hit me if you are that slow. He was cut off as his back was suddenly pierced by a wooden Issei stemming out from the trunk of a tree. The masked man was not hurt by it, he had managed to phase out of it as he did the others. It seems that you are far more skilled than you let on to be, you I must kill first. In a flash the man disappeared, then reappeared behind Issei, his hand reaching for his throat. He was too fast, and it seemed as if Issei was about to catch Issei when a large red skeletal fist smashed him away. He got up as if it was nothing, but both Itachi and Issei knew that he had felt that last attack. Looks like you did get the drop on him. Itachi did not take his eyes off the masked man. It was clear that he had to allow himself to touch them at some point to attack them. It is the moment when he is about to attack you when you can attack him. Issei, best leave that to me, focus on support. Issei at that point took a step back and differed to Itachi's judgment in this case. I'll do as you say, just I mean you are meant to be a genius after all. You can flatter me after we kill him, for Konoha and all those you have caused to suffer. Itachi said this as he created a skeletal body Susanoo and charged the masked man. Issei at this point made two hand signs and created a massive tree trunk out of his arm and sent it behind Itachi. Making the half hand sign, he created multiple trunks that now spiraled behind Itachi in their dual attack. You children never learn, and to pull that out so soon you must be really desperate to defeat me. He phased out of this attack, but at the point he phased in, three wood clones of Issei popped out of the spiraling tree trunks and impaled him into the ground. Issei then tore off the trunk from his arm and turned to Itachi and said, so that was easier what? Itachi shook his head, it's not over yet. Issei at this point felt the urge to lean suddenly to the left. The next instant the masked man's hand went right past his face. Son of a shit, I knew it. A clone, to be more precise. It was a substitution he had hit. The masked man was about to bring his other hand in when Issei launched a hard elbow into his stomach at just the right time, as well as tapped his arm. The elbow had a tree trunk extend from it, causing the man to go flying away before he could use his space-time technique. The masked man dusted of the attack again as if it was nothing, but this time, it was his turn to be surprised. Issei was no right beside him, on his arm in fact, and brought a massive wooden fist into his face. It was not enough to break the mask, but it did send him flying back. I called it the wood release, wooden smasher. It was at this point Itachi wanted to hit Issei for his shit choice in names, as well as his humor during battle with a powerful foe. Your words will be the death of me someday, Issei. Issei gave a laugh, and they turned to face their foe again. It was clear to both of them that things were only going to get harder from here on out. They both attacked again, this time without any words, and again therefore remained unharmed. It was clear he had some type of revitalization. Zenovia watched in awe as an Issei 2 years younger than when she met him fought a foe that made Kakabia look like he was easy. Then again, this Issei had no giant red dragon armor Susanoo she believed he had called it. She knew this, for if he did have it, he would have used it by now. That was her assumptions. At this point the man had now grabbed Issei by the throat as he teleported behind him. But even she knew that Issei had him where he wanted him. A giant red hand grabbed and squeezed down upon him, causing the masked man to squirm and then vanish in a puff of smoke. Both of them glared at the masked man, who had somehow managed to escape the grasp of the giant skeletal hand. What occurred next, she did not see. The world began to be sucked into a black hole. Issei, the masked man, and the young man he called Itachi, all of them faded away. Zenovia found that she was alone in the pitch dark, but then a light shone right in her eyes. Zenovia snapped up. She was back in the dining room again, and Madara was staring her in the eyes. Is Sharingan ablaze? I say that is more than enough for now, don't you agree? It wasn't a question. He slowly got up and pushed his chair in. Zenovia at this point stood up and said, wait, that can't be it, surely that is not what he meant. It was at this point that Madara gave a sigh, one he had to let out due to the blindness of people, not to mention their stupidity. Have you no memory of what just happened? I'll have you recall the last words you heard there for me. He now had turned to face her and was glaring at her expectantly. It took Zenovia about 2 seconds to recall what she had last heard. It had been from that Itachi guy. His ally said, your words will be the death of me someday, Issei. Madara gave her a nod and said, ah, so you can hear, you are just not smart enough to understand. She was about to ask him what he meant when she froze, if that was all an illusion of the past. Madara broke it off there on purpose. The purpose was so that she could ponder those last words. She now looked at Madara and said what became of his ally? To this Madara did not reply to her and just walked away, leaving her to make her own assumptions, but before he disappeared he said, that which I used to create that is not meant for that. Truly, to be more precise, I would say if you were to stay there any longer your mind would be broken. With this ominous note he left her to ponder what it was that he had just told her. She did not know if he was lying or not, but she had heard that Issei could break anyone if they looked into his eyes. Was that what Madara had done? Did his friend or ally die because of him, or did he do something that caused his death later on? She did not know what to think, but now she knew she had something else to think of. How she was going to explain this to Asia and Rainer. The two of them were now staring at her as if she was slightly mad, but still mad is mad. Or as Issei had famously said in the movie dedicated to him, one which Asia had bought. Well, a loss is a loss is a loss. If you lost, you still lost, be it your own failings or your own devices. She shook her head. She did not recall watching it, or at least would not admit to watching that. She shook her head of those thoughts and thought back to Itachi's words. The Issei in that memory or illusion was 2 years younger, though he seemed a little more mature and immature than the one she knew. She just made him a paradox, then again he could be for all intents and purposes. She shook her and closed her eyes. She imagined how he beat Riser in the film, how she saw him destroy the rebel fallen angel Kakabiel, how he looked when he did not have a shirt on. Her eyes snapped open. She did not know why that last one came into her head. Silently she cursed Asia for influencing. Damn girl, look what she has gone and put in my head. God please help me in the time Issei is away. She had to admit, though in all honesty, she did not mind that image in her head. The Cult Research Club. Riaz was not happy. She had lost. In fact, she had lost the past 6 times to Sona, who now smiled evilly at her. Oh my, Riaz, you really have no talent for this. After all, you're used to all your pieces falling into your lap. Riaz gritted her teeth in determination. I'm not going to be beat by you, Sona, not this time. Sona's smile only widened when she said this. She knew this was a lot more fun for her than it was for Riaz. She shook her head and scat at Riaz, you've made the same mistake again. You chose the Gremory bloodline power. Now holding her controller she showed why that was a mistake. Her character appeared out from behind Riaz and hit her with a massive fire attack. She laughed evilly as Riaz's character's health was reduced to 0. Everyone knows that the Issei skill type is the best there is in the game. She put down her controller and continued to laugh as Riaz saw Sona's victory pose both on screen and in reality. Hey, it's not my fault they made that quest to get that power like overly impossible to complete. She pouted as her best friend just continued to laugh at her. Oh, what, you had to go to Madara in game, find Issei, catch Issei, bring him to Madara, then duel Madara with him, survive. She was not yet halfway, and Riaz had already fallen over and hit her face on the floor. Then you have to help him hunt down Vali, who stole his scroll, kill Vali, loot his body, and with a 0.1% chance of him dropping the Issei's scroll item. He lets you keep the scroll and use it, and here you have it in Issei skill type. She looked rather confident with her explanation. Riaz could only sigh at her. How many times did it take for you doing that entire quest line to get it? Sona paused as she recalled about 10 times. My sister ran it with me, so it took about a sixth of the normal time to do it. Riaz got up with a shock. Wait, your sister at GM helped you? That is so unfair. My brother won't even lift his finger to help me. Speak of the devil, in the area where their characters had fought, and Riaz had now respawned, appeared none other than the magical girl Levi Tan. She did her entrance pose before intro or before battle and said, behold the power of Mo and magical girls, all you evildoers beware. Sona fell over and hit the back of her head on the ground. She wished her sister would act a little more mature. It did not help that Madara's disciple the game was not only online, but had live voice feed for all to hear. My beloved little sister likes to play as a sneaky ninja girl who has high affinity with Issei. Riaz now looked at her best friend who was now flushed red. So you are after him in game, is that true for reality, Sona? Riaz strained the last words out over about 10 seconds to make her point. She then jumped up and said, I knew it, you do have the hots for him, no wonder why you and your sister visit him every morning. Riaz had forgot that the live voice feed was still on, and every player had just heard what they said. Sona turned to Riaz and said, oh, shit. In an instant before they headed offline their feed got hit with like 2000 friend request. When it had turned off Riaz now looked rather guilty, and Sona rather pissed. Riaz Gremory, after all those hours I put into that character I can now never play her again. Riaz did not look up at her friend, she knew the shame of what she had just done. Oh great, this will be the talk of the underworld for eternity, the 2 daughters from 2 of the 72 pillars playing this game. She threw her hands up in the air and said, do you know what all of our friends and extended family are going to call us now? It was at this moment that Serafal burst through the window and said, they will call you the 2 unrequited lover of the devil friend. Riaz had no idea how she got here or why she chose to break through the window. Sona now grabbed Riaz, who had not yet fully understood what the fuss was all about. Madara will freaking kill you if he hears of this, and no doubt he will. Now her message got across as Riaz gave a large gulp and looked at her. She had forgot that Issei was chased because of Madara. Before she could say anything, Serafal said it. For here now is the time where you got, oh shit, then Madara burst through the roof and eats your souls. She smiled as she said this. It rather unnerved the two young devils. Could you not say that with that smile? Why do I get the feeling Issei is laughing at us? Sona said this rather rudely. For the record, Issei was not. Both girls gave a sigh at the older one and both slowly packed up their laptops as well as special edition controllers. Bufu, I wonder if Issei were to find out about this, would he be happy, sad or not care? Sona looked at her older sister in horror as if she feared that the older and more immature side of her sister would tell Issei. Don't look so worried, little star. Sona had no idea why her sister suddenly said this. I was going to tell you in game, but then I realized that might not be good to release such sensitive information into an online game. She closed her eyes and stuck out her tongue when she said this to make herself look silly. Riaz looked to Sona. At times it was hard to believe that Serafal was the older sister. Oh, I almost forgot. What I came here to tell you is that Issei is not here anymore. The question mark literally appeared above both younger devils' heads. Oh, what is with that? Ah, okay then, let me explain. The great big red dragon sent him on a magical journey away from here to help another world. She spun as she said this, making it less believable. Leviathan, are you sure you did not just dream that up? Neither Riaz or Sona could believe it, but then again the truth is not always believed. Thanks for watching this video. Part 5 is over. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support the JAGA03 for writing that awesome fanfic. See you in the next video. Goodbye.